The recruitment industry is broken, and it comes right from the top. It's these old school legacy directors that haven't done the job in 30 years.
Hello, I'm Dr. Becky Sage. I'm co-host of Founded and Grounded, and I'm here today with Ollie. Hi, Ollie. How are things going for you?
Really good, thank you. How's everything with yourself?
Yeah, things are great. I've actually just been reflecting back on several of our guests that we had this season, and it's so amazing how many things we can learn, how much energy there is in each one of these founders, all the things they're doing to make an impact in the world. And so, yeah, that can feel very energizing and motivating and positive. So I'm feeling really good.
We've actually been doing a bit of work looking back at the entire back catalogue of Founded and Grounded, because as our regular listeners will know, at the end of every episode, we ask our featured entrepreneurs for one piece of advice. And now we've actually nearly clocked up 99 founders who've been on the podcast. And we're actually going to be putting out a special episode featuring all of that advice in one episode, which will be available for an audio download, but also as a PDF as well. And we're also going to be doing a fun video to help promote the 99 founders piece as well.
Yep, I'm looking forward to everybody getting to see that. I've seen the props. That's all I'm going to say. There's props. So we still have another founder for this season. So who are we talking to this episode?
I'm speaking to Alfie Whattam, who is founder of Alfa Technologies, a recruitment company. But Alfie has got a very interesting background, and he's also a very young entrepreneur as well.
He really does have an interesting background, and I'm actually very intrigued how somebody can turn from a celebrity magician into a successful founder.
Well, we're about to find out. Alfie, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Ollie, thank you for having me.
It's going to be an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I've seen lots of the stuff that you're doing online. An author, podcaster, angel investor, serial business owner. Very impressed all at the age of 27.
Well, thank you. It's it's mostly happened in the past couple of years, but that's like the thing about compounding, right? You know, it starts off slow. It goes it doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It goes 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and by the time you're at 30, you're at billions. So it goes very, very slow to begin with, and then it goes very, very quick.
That's why they call it the seventh wonder of the world, right?
Yeah, compound interest. So Warren Buffett or Einstein said that.
Einstein, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah. Alfie, can you tell me about your journey from celebrity magician to becoming a tech entrepreneur and investor?
That's a weird line, isn't it? I'll give you the very short version of the story. I was born in York, lovely place, not too much to do there though. Grew up as a kid and a teenager, got into magic and performing magic tricks, just as you do as a kid. I really fell in love with it. The idea of being able to do the impossible, or at least the illusion of it, was very, very cool. And then started to get good and performed at shows and parties all around the world for prime ministers, billionaires, world leaders. Was on TV shows like Britain's Got Talent and had my own show for a while. And that was a lot of fun. To be honest, I really enjoyed the business side of show business a little bit more than the show side. I mean, I still do podcasts and stuff, so I must have an element of the show left in me still, but enjoyed the business side. So I went into like talent management, not necessarily managing magicians though. I did that for a little while, but there wasn't a lot of money in magician management, right? I went into like tech, talent management and recruitment. That's a lot more scalable and a lot more easier to grow. And to be honest, tech was my other main passion. I always used tech and digital platforms and social media before it was, taking over the world, to build the magic side as well. So did that for a while and moved to New Zealand and spent 5 years working for a big FTSE 250 recruitment agency. Started as a trainee and then worked my way up until I was leading a huge team of 50 people across the UK and Ireland and India, and then moved back to London. And then a year and a half ago, I left and set up my own agency, which does a similar thing. We build software engineering teams across AI and Web3 and cutting edge technologies. So we help businesses that are using artificial intelligence to discover cancer treatments. We help companies that are building technology to help life go multi-planetary and get onto Mars, another cool industry. So this is something I'm really, really passionate about, helping to build the future and scaling tech teams that allows people to do it. And that's my day job. That's what I spend 90% of my time doing. And then I have a podcast, wrote a book, do a newsletter, do speaking, a little bit of investing. And then when I have a few minutes to myself, I'm a new dad and a husband. So yeah, a few different hats, but it's all centered around building out tech and business.
I'm really interested actually because my dad's a Kiwi and I've been there many times, and I think the pace of life is very different over there coming back to the UK. Was there a culture shock when you came back?
Yeah, I would say so. I went straight from York to New Zealand. New Zealand is a lovely place, like beautiful beaches, much better weather than London, and really nice people as well. It's definitely a lot more relaxed in some areas than London, so I get what you're saying. It is like a little bit of a cultural difference going straight into the city and then into the thick of it. But I do love that. I have that sort of DNA within me. I think if I sit too long on a beach, I start to go a little bit crazy. I'm always wanting to build. I'm always wanting to do. I'm always wanting to share. And yeah, just being alone, relaxing, I can't do it for that long, to be honest. So I love New Zealand. I'd love to go back at some point in the future. But for now, the city life in London is a little bit more what I'm wanting to do in my 20s, I guess.
Great answer there. So I'm really interested to know about what really inspired you to launch Alfa Technology and what your ultimate vision is.
I mean, spending 5 years working for a big corporate is a great experience. You can learn lots of different aspects of the job. However, you are a small cog in a big machine at the end of the day. And it's very difficult to have impact when you're working for a business which turns over billions and they've got tens of thousands of people. So I wanted just to have a little bit more creativity. I wanted to have a little bit more freedom. I wanted to be able to make higher level decisions without having to get approval from 25 people, right? Half of them around the world in different places you've never been to. So I set up my agency, really to have that more lifestyle. I had a kid at the time that was just born, and I wanted to be there. Didn't want to be slaving away and in an office 9 to 5. And I really wanted, saying that, when you have a startup, it's not 9 to 5, it's 24/7 really. So maybe I shot myself in the foot there a little bit, but
it's more flexible, isn't it? That's the point.
I'm my own boss. I can decide when I want to work and that sort of thing. And it's been great for the first year. We're fully bootstrapped. I haven't raised any money. I just put my own cash into it, profitable from basically day one. And been able to make it into a real business. Now got a small team in London. We're working with people overseas in Pakistan, in the Netherlands, in the Philippines, in Bangladesh, and we've been able to build something really, really cool on a shoestring budget. And like I mentioned at the start of this pod about compound growth, we, from a financial perspective, we're making more like this quarter than we made last year. So it really, really it starts to stack up once the ball gets rolling a little bit.
So what makes you stand out from your competitors, Alfie?
I think a lot of people in my industry, in recruitment, they don't have a passion for the sector as much as I do. So I love software engineering. I can code myself in a bunch of different languages. Not great, but I understand the fundamentals of it. I know more about AI and Web3 than half of the AI experts and gurus that you see online, right? And I think that passion, that genuine interest, it really, really does bleed into the work. Steve Jobs said that when you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like play, and it allows you to keep going when the times get hard. In recruitment, it's a really, really tough industry, and I see so many people, join, they give it a try for a few weeks, they give it a try for a few months, they get hit in the head, they face rejection, they get criticized, they get hung up on the phone, and then they just quit because they can't handle the pressure. But if you love what you do, and if you really enjoy building exciting, futuristic technology businesses, then that will allow you to keep going when it gets really, really hard, Ollie. So I think that the thing that separates me is just I'm a lot more passionate about the game than almost anybody that I know, and I'm willing to stick it out longer. I did 100 episodes of my podcast and nobody was watching. And then after about 100 episodes, people started paying attention. Most podcasters, they give up on episode 2. Because nobody listened to episode 1. And of those people that get to episode 2, 99% of them don't make it to episode 10. I mean, imagine doing 100 episodes and nobody watches it. And you spent thousands on it, your time, your energy, your effort, the opportunity cost that comes with that. But if you stick it out and if you're passionate about it and if you love what you do, then that's your USP.
Yeah, we're definitely playing the long-term game like you are in terms of loving what we do, and playing the long game. Talking about passion, I can definitely hear that coming through in your voice in terms of love for the industry. Talk to me a bit about the larger industry of recruitment, though, because sometimes it gets a bit of a bad reputation. So what do you see going on in the industry that needs to change?
The recruitment industry is broken, and it comes right from the top. It's these old school legacy directors that haven't done the job in 30 years. They're just in a training and strategy role, whatever the fuck that means, basically, right? Can I swear on this?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, great. Okay, and they have no idea what they're doing. They're dinosaurs, right? And I saw that in my last business, respectfully to those people. I won't say their names out of loyalty, I suppose. But there are some people that you hear what they say and you just think, what fucking planet are you on? What are you talking about? And some of the stuff is highly unethical. Some of the stuff is borderline illegal. I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff over the years from recruiters calling up other recruiters pretending to be a candidate so they can learn about what jobs that recruiter is representing. I've had even more extreme examples, and I've seen this with my own eyes, of recruiters pretending to be a candidate and going through an interview process with a company to learn about what's happening with the business. So they can gather that intel, give it to a colleague, and then they can go and target that business with suitable CVs based on the information they've acquired, right? The big recruitment companies out there, they are pulling these scams, and it's making them billions, right? With Alpha, we wanted to be more genuine. We wanted to be more ethical. We wanted to change the sector and really disrupt that really bad way of doing things. Recruiters have a bad name, and it's well deserved because of the amount of illegal and unethical shit that happens, right? So I wanted to really come along and say, look, we won't do anything unethical and break the law to get a short-term win. We'd much rather play the long term, and that might mean slower growth to begin with, but it's a people business. People buy from people that they like, people buy from people that they know, and people buy from people that they trust. And if you can do great service to somebody and they understand that you're doing it properly, they'll come back to you. They'll refer you to other people. And ultimately, that is how you'll win.
And there's good people in every industry, undoubtedly. But how long do you think it will take for the industry to change its reputation and its spots?
Well, there are a lot of new, younger, exciting founders that are doing it properly. Mm-hmm. And they are adding value through events, through community, through podcasts, and building real relationships with the industry. And then they add so much value that the potential customer base almost feels guilty if they don't want to partner with them. And that's our approach, a content-led, community-led strategy, rather than just having a list of the yellow pages and just calling through and spamming and sending out CVs and hoping, if you throw enough shit at the wall, some of it will stick, right? And thankfully, I do believe that as, those older, more legacy mindset people, fade away, the new generation will replace those people. But it's going to take a long time, to be honest, unless we have some cutting edge breakthrough in ChatGPT 7 or something that replaces the need for recruiters, that replaces the need for podcasters, that replaces the need for people. Who knows where it's going? But I think it will take a while. I'm just excited that we can be part of that change and that shift in mindset.
The security threat to UK tech startups is growing. Protecting your innovation is crucial to your business success. Secure Innovation is here to help, and it only takes a few simple steps to get started. Don't leave it too late. Visit npsa.gov.uk/innovation to find out more and download the Quick Start Guide for free today. Are you looking to access finance for your business, but unsure where to go and who to trust? Introducing Hexa Finance, providing growth funding to startups and scale-ups throughout the UK. Ben and Stu started Hexa Finance with a clear mission to make finance more accessible to business owners like you. Launched in 2020, they know firsthand the growing pains you're facing. Their fast growth business is the proud winner of the Startup of the Year award and has recently been recognized for its economic contribution. So, if you need funding now, or it's on your horizon, the experienced team at Hexa Finance are here to help. To access your free consultation, simply go to hexafinance.co.uk/contact. Something that is so exciting about being a founder is that you do get to be a part of shifting mindsets. And this is something that Alfie talked about a lot, but we've talked about it a lot with all of the founders that have been that we've interviewed this season, and I'm sure in previous seasons as well. And so I think it's so important for you to recognize that if you're doing something, of course you've got all those business success metrics. But if you're passionate, if you've got something that you've got true conviction around, then you should know that you will be shifting mindsets. And there's something very powerful about that, whether you hit all your business goals or not. And I think that that's very motivating too for founders.
Yeah, it was really interesting to meet Alfie in person because I've seen a lot of his content online, and sometimes you build up a perception about someone based on what you've seen. Now, I saw firsthand the kind of fire in his belly, that conviction in his eyes, and the determination was quite frankly scary, but also really encouraging to see in such a young person. I think Alfie is going to be definitely going places with his businesses. I think he is very driven and he knows what he wants from life, which is important.
And something that came out loud and clear in terms of what he wants is disruption. I think he's, as you said, that fire is very clear. I could almost imagine him in the workplace as he was talking. Imagine him in a traditional workplace and getting very frustrated by systems, processes, seeing things being done in a certain way that perhaps don't appear to be effective, and thinking, actually, I can go out and I can disrupt and I can do things better. And this is often the driving force for the founders that we know and that we talk to.
Yeah, and I think in Alfie's case, a short career in recruitment, obviously very successful, running international teams, billing out millions of pounds as a top consultant, and he's just gone, well, why can't I do this for myself? And he's done it.
I thought it was brilliant because I do recognize those feelings, particularly when I was younger. I guess because that's when I was working in roles for other people. Having those feelings, having that frustration, feeling like you're working really, really hard and you've got so much more you could do, and feeling like there's a ceiling on that, or feeling like you're sort of being trapped and you're not able to do what you want to do. And so definitely that motivation was something that led me into entrepreneurship. But I should say as well, you don't have to be young to disrupt. And as somebody who's got, well, not quite a couple of decades older than Alfie, but certainly got a good decade or so on him. I think that I did want to also say that just because we're a little older doesn't mean that everyone's a dinosaur too.
No, that's so true. And I think if you look at the research of, founders and what age a successful entrepreneur usually is, it is around 42, I believe. But I think that's the great thing about entrepreneurship, right? You can start at any point. You can be retired. You have to look at, KFC when that was started. Other businesses, people can be in their late 50s, 60s. It can be people who have just left school at 16 with no qualifications. Like, that is the barrier to entry in the world of entrepreneurship. Anyone can do it with the right mindset, the right beliefs, the right vision, and the drive within them, which obviously Alfie has got in abundance. And I think what's really good about what he's doing, he's building this whole content strategy around his business. And, the world of recruitment has got a bit of a bad name for various reasons in terms of like the way in which they conduct business. He obviously alluded to that later in the podcast. I won't give too much away. But what I think he's doing is very powerful in terms of bringing people to him. He's creating that inbound demand rather than doing that kind of cold, traditional outreach in terms of marketing.
Yeah, it's something that several of the entrepreneurs that I work with, myself included, I think we really believe in the power of a content strategy and more of that inbound work. It's not always easy to do though, right? And one thing I thought, again, was very motivating was when Alfie said that he did 100 episodes of his podcast and no one was listening. And it took to that point to kind of then get that traction and start to get more take up. And so I think there's something very motivating in that. But I also think there is sort of some words of caution here as well, in the sense of content is, as a strategy, is all consuming. I think if you're going to do it and you expect to make that impact, you can't really let off. And this is where I definitely fall short, is I've got so many things going on, and, maybe it's just excuses, but I definitely have times when I'm like, yeah, content, pushing loads out there, and then times when I'm doing a lot less of it. And of course, that then means that you sort of almost have to start again in terms of like maybe putting in that work in order to suddenly get those bigger moments. But do you think that there's things people should be cautious of in terms of having a content strategy?
I think it comes back to that consistency, as you say there. Like, if you're going to go for it, then you really do have to be consistent. I think we're all guilty of it falling off the bandwagon and starting again. But to make that bigger impact, you do have to have that consistency. I think that's one of the hygiene factors, which you definitely have to have out there as a very minimum. Mm-hmm. And then obviously you're talking about, knowing your audience very well, what resonates with them, what's trending. Can you jump on the back of anything that's in terms of newsjacking? Like, how are you positioning yourself? There's so many facets to it, and it's not easy to do. I think if you're just looking at all these people who have gone viral, sometimes if you're not putting content out there yourself, you're kind of thinking, God, this looks really easy. I just have to create a couple of videos and go viral and I get my claim to fame. But it is not like that.
I find that you have to have, or certainly I go through phases where I'm like, okay, my brain is kind of in content mode, but it has to have a certain amount of space, and I have to have a certain amount of momentum, and I have to have a strategy and a plan around it in order to be in that place. And then, yeah, like I said, as soon as certain things happen, very busy times happen with the other aspects of my work, and then it just stops it. So I think, yeah, like you said, people need to be really aware that it takes a lot, but that it can be a very useful strategy. And actually, you don't have to go viral in order for content to be something that is useful for you as a business owner. And I think that that's also, so another thing to bear in mind is like, what is the purpose of that content? And if you are just kind of throwing stuff out there to see what sticks, that's not probably going to be as helpful as actually understanding what's the role that this is playing for your business.
And I think Alfie's point of quantity and being productive in terms of putting stuff out there is really important. I think if you're doing anything in life, like, you should aim for that 100 mark, whether it's doing a podcast, it's doing sales calls, it's speaking to investors. Like, you can only get an objective response after you've done the work. Like, and it's hard if you're getting a lot of no's, stuff isn't sticking, like, it's easy to just stop. But then that comes back to what we talked about time and time again on this podcast, is that perseverance, getting knocked down, getting back up again and going again. And I think you need that minimum of 100 of anything that you're doing in life. And the quicker you can get there, the quicker you can learn about what works and what doesn't.
You're motivating me now to be like, let's have a streak of 100 on all of my different content pieces and see if that helps. It's certainly getting there on Founded and Grounded.
As our listeners know, we do aim for very high production standards. So we do actually record our podcast in 2 separate recordings. So we have the interview of the guest, which is why you always hear me speaking to the founders. Becky goes away, analyzes all of those conversations, takes some notes, puts all of those thoughts and business learnings into our production notes, which are then reviewed by myself. We then go into the studio again, have another recording session, and then that's all edited together in a very seamless 3-part podcast, which hopefully our listeners will appreciate. And yeah, so if we look at the number of podcast episodes, you can pretty much double that in terms of what we've actually done in terms of recording.
And you've been there for everyone. So congratulations, Holly, on doing that. And I only hope maybe I'll be with you for the next 100 or 99 episodes. Let's hope so. The other thing you just talked about there, which I think people can really take in terms of making that content easier, is you just described a process. And I think that's what makes this easier for us, is we know what it is we're doing, what we have to do for each episode, what our responsibilities are. And that's certainly what it made. I find that makes it a lot easier as well, because there's this clear process, there's a clear shape and format that we're using, and then you just know you're replicating that all each time. So all we need to focus on is the actual content and that kind of what we're going to say around the content, rather than having to think about the process or the structure or the format every single time, which I think can make content very difficult.
Yeah, and that ultimately becomes your intellectual property, that process of how you do things. Like you say, we've got a very slick process now, but that's been honed over 5 seasons with 3 different co-hosts and challenging times in between that. And I think that now we're very clear on how we record content, what the production looks like, what the process is. You know, we've mapped out our production dates at the start of season 5, which goes out this episode on the 10th of June, and we knew that from the start of the season. And we've got people to be responsible to in terms of sponsors, and they're expecting certain standards in terms of those episodes and when they're going out, the guests that we're featuring. So you do have to become quite methodical in terms of content production. And what I think where the magic really happens is when that process turns into a habit and you don't even have to think about it. It's like, you know, if you're a pilot and flying a plane, they've got a checklist of everything that they have to do. But that is their process, right? That is clearly defined, and everyone is following the same rules.
Absolutely. And I think that applies across a whole business, right, as well. I mean, we're talking about content, but the more you can get to that point, I mean, doing it once you know what the business is and what it is it's trying to achieve, but the more you can get to that process, the operationalization, the easier it's going to be to show up. The other factors that make content really easy are if you have energy and confidence. And those are 2 things that I feel like Alfie has in abundance. So I'd love to hear more about the network that he's got around him that allows him to then show up with this energy and confidence.
I like to surround myself with people that are doing 10 times better than I am, right? I always want to be the most stupid person in the room, because it's a great thing for your ego if you're like, you know, the god of the room, but it's not a great thing for your future, because you are, you know, the cliche is true. You are the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. And for a lot of people listening to that, for a lot of people hearing that, that's challenging, because, you know, I was a kid growing up in York and I didn't know anybody around me that was doing anything remotely interesting. You know, my friends were working in Tesco or whatever, and that's cool, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. So initially, I would read books and biographies about people like Steve Jobs, people like Elon Musk. I'd listen to podcasts, you know, Tim Ferriss, or, you know, the All In podcast is one that I love at the moment. And if you surround yourself by that virtual network, if you surround yourself by people through those books, it's almost like having that community around you. But it's not quite as good, but it's almost there. So that's a good starting point for people to follow. But for me personally, I love going to different events for founders, different events for leaders, different CEO meetings and networking groups, and just people in my sector of tech, in my sectors of content that want to push and want to challenge. And I always want to be the most stupid person in that room, so I can learn, and not being afraid to ask super basic questions. You know, what do you mean by that? Can you tell me more about this? Does that make sense? Like super vague, open-ended questions, and then just shutting up, letting them speak. You know, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Like I do not have all the answers. I don't have 1% of the answers, but somebody out there does, and I will find them. It's like that Taken scene. I will find you.
A great attitude to have there, Alfie. And I'm interested to know about one of your favourite failures so far, and what were the lessons that you took from it?
Good question. I think in the early days of building my company, I tried to do everything myself. And I mean everything. I went pure micromanagement. A thumbnail needed designed. I was the guy, right? Every customer support email, right? That was my job. And I was burning myself out, working 100 hours a week and running on a hamster treadmill. And I really had to kind of escape that mindset. And that's when I started to delegate more. That's when I started to automate. That's when I started to systematize and really build out a team. So it was definitely a failure. Not necessarily some huge thing that I failed and had to, recover from, but it would have been if I didn't quickly change it. So I think it's an important lesson for any founder, really. Don't try to do everything yourself. Look at the schedule, look at your calendar, write out your to-do list, and immediately start crossing off things that somebody else could do, whether that's a person or whether that's technology, and then start delegating. You need to work out what your time is worth per hour, and work out how much money you're making in a month. Divide it by the amount of hours that you're working. That's your hourly salary. And if you can afford to hire somebody for less than that money, and if you don't, you're literally leaving money on the table, or throwing it away. And when I started to realize this, everything changed, and I was like, all right, I'm never ever again am I cleaning my apartment. Never ever again am I copywriting for LinkedIn content or whatever. There's somebody out there that's better than I am, and they can do it for a lower price than it would take me to do it myself. And all that money that I can save, I can reinvest it back into the business. I can spend it on having a great life with my wife and my kids and all of that stuff. So I think the failure was ego. The failure was thinking I was the best at everything, and in reality, the only thing that I was the best at was none of that. Really, I really needed to just start spreading the load a little bit. But as soon as I did, everything changed.
I completely agree with that, and I think once you get to that point where you do delegate, the returns are exponential, as you say. But I also do agree with the fact that you learnt how to do everything for yourself. So when you did outsource it, you knew exactly what you wanted from that third party. Yeah.
A lot of the time people try to delegate and they don't know what the person needs to do. So they're going to get ripped off. They're going to get scammed. They're going to get lied to. I've seen it happen 100 times. And now when people try and do it to me, I'm like, look, I can do this task myself. I'm not hiring you to do it because of your skill or because of your expertise. It's because of time.
Yep.
So, and this is what you do all day, every single day. You're a specialist in this area. So if you can't do it better than me, and if you can't do it faster than me, then what are you doing, right? I completely agree.
So Alfie, for founders who are actively growing their teams, what is one recruitment mistake that they must avoid?
The most common mistake people make when recruiting is that they think that they're going to get the best people on the market by having this weird 7-stage process, which involves a video interview, a face-to-face interview, a Teams meeting, a technical test, a psychometric assessment, 10 reference calls, and I don't know, looking at their birth certificate. It's the most weird thing in the world. And the best companies, the most successful companies, the fastest growing companies, the most exciting businesses, they all have one thing in common, and that's that they move quickly. Look at the whole Sam Altman thing with OpenAI the other weekend. In a weekend, he was fired from OpenAI, hired to Microsoft, and then hired back to OpenAI in like 24, 48 hours or something, right? Like, good talent gets snapped up fast. If you have some weird 5-stage process because you're trying to get the best people, the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to get the worst people, because all the best people are going to be snapped up after the second stage, and the people that you're left with at the end of that process are going to be the people that nobody else wanted. So, and look, saying blanket statements like that, look, I get it. Like, it's not a solid rule for everything. I'm just talking for the vast majority of people, right? In the vast majority of situations, good talent gets snapped up really, really quickly, and they don't need to apply for jobs. They don't need to be going through Indeed. They don't need to be on LinkedIn clicking apply. The best people have got other recruiters, other people going after them, trying to convince them. So if you're trying to build the best tech team or whatever team possible, don't just put up an advert and hope and pray that the A players are going to come and run to your doors. It's not going to happen. You need to hire a specialist. You need to hire a headhunter, somebody that understands the market, somebody that's got thousands of connections and relationships and deep network in that space, that they can go, okay, you need to hire this, you can pay this location, this criteria, these are the top 3 skills. Instantly, I can tell you who the top 5 people are in that city, I can tell you these two are not interested because they're not looking right now. This person is asking for too much money, but these are the two that you need to speak to. And it looks like the recruiter has done 10 minutes of work, but in reality, they've done years of work of relationship building to get it to that point. And you're paying for the speed, you're paying for the efficiency. Or you can try your best to do it yourself, and you can spend a long time going for a 5-stage interview process. You're left with somebody average, and then the cost that person would then bring your business, like the negative cost, is so much more than the fee that you would pay for a recruiter, a specialist to do that task for you. Not to mention on top, the opportunity cost, because if you're spending all your time doing the job of a recruiter, it goes back to what I was saying a second ago, how you're doing something which isn't in your skill set, and you could hire somebody else and save money in the grand scheme of things. So that's the biggest mistake. People think, oh, I shouldn't use a recruiter because it's going to cost me money. In reality, not using a recruiter, that's going to cost you a lot more money.
What are the other objections you hear aside from budget and costing a business money?
You know, a lot of people, they have an internal recruitment team as well, and that's cool. Sometimes you can have a really excellent, motivated team of recruiters internally. The challenge with that, a lot of the time, is they're only representing one business all day, every day. So they don't have access to certain different candidates that perhaps would only be interested in other companies. You know, if you're working for a health tech business, and you're advertising for jobs, and people are coming your way that are interested in working in the medical field, they're interested in working in life sciences, whatever, you might not get access to some incredible AI talent that only wants that industry. But because I understand various sectors, I can then move people around, convince them about why your company is something that will be appealing to that person. So, I guess it's just not limiting yourself to a specific pool, opening up your reach, not getting the best candidate on the market, but getting the best candidate in the market, if that makes sense.
100%. So, Alfie, you became a parent recently. So, firstly, congratulations. Secondly, I want to know how this has changed your outlook on life and approach to business.
Yeah, it's wild, right? You got 2 kids. I got a 1-year-old. I got a puppy as well. I thought that would be actually, he's not a puppy anymore. He's almost 3 now. But you think that's like training to before the kids, but it's completely different, man. It's so much work. Like, if you think building a company is hard, building a family is a completely different set of challenges, right? But also the most rewarding thing that you can do in the world. I know it's a cliche, it's what everybody's going to say. People with kids are like, yeah, I get it. People without kids are like, I've heard this a million times. It's impossible until you've actually got a living, breathing life form in front of you, which came from you. And if you don't feed it, if you don't look after it, it's going to die. You have to keep it going. You have to keep it happy. You have to keep it alive and healthy. It's so much work. I'm complaining, but really it's the missus and that are the heroes of this. So having kids is probably the hardest thing that you can do, but also the best thing. I think I would love to have more. I'm hoping we can have another one this year, maybe next year, and then potentially more after that. I think for a while I was like, let's keep it at 1, maybe 2, but now I think the more the better, man. It's like pure love. So why not?
I'll come back to you in 5 years and see where you are on that answer.
I've got an army of 30 Alfies walking around the world. Yeah.
Excellent. So building a business can be all-consuming. I want to know, what's a sacrifice that you've made either consciously or unconsciously?
That's something that people don't understand, that they think that you can start a company and that you can still go out every Friday and Saturday night and have fun with the boys. They think that you can still play video games when you're tired. They think that you can still watch movies and TV shows and binge Netflix. Like, if you think you're going to build a company that's going to be successful, and if you think you're going to be able to do all those things that you did before, then you are like fucking deluded. Like you are completely full of shit. Like, you have to sacrifice things to build a company because you have to work harder than the next person. Like, somebody else is working on probably the exact same thing that you're working on, and they are trying to take away your lunch. They are trying to steal the money from your children, basically, right? So you have to work harder than the other people in the room. People don't like to talk about like hustle culture or whatever, but I mean, there is a bit of a reality to the fact that if you want to work like 3 or 4 days a week and you want to build a company, like, good luck. Like, you might be able to do it. I can't. Like, I have no idea how you'd be able to do that. Like, it's not uncommon for me to work 6-7 days a week and, like crazy hours. But I do it because I want to, not because I have to. It goes back to what I mentioned earlier about loving what you do. But yeah, like, there's so many things that I've sacrificed. There's so many things that I've given up. I used to love, like, chilling out and, like, playing video games or whatever. I just don't have time for it anymore. But the what I want to build and what I want to become and what I want to share, to me, is more valuable than the other stuff. So, it's a question that you need to ask yourself before you go on that journey. Like, am I really, really willing to give those things up? And if you're not, then you shouldn't start, because you will fail.
What are you afraid of, Alfie?
I'd probably say dying, really. Like, I went through this really weird period of time when I was, like, a teenager, where I was, like, studying how to, like, live forever. It sounds really weird, but I went through, like, different like, supplements. So yeah, I went through this really weird period of time where I was completely focused on, like, longevity and wellness, and I'm still really interested in that sort of stuff. I love, like, AG1, and I meditate every single day, and big into, like, gratitude journals and visualization, and mental health is just as important as the physical health, right? So I work out every day, but working out on the body is only one thing. Working out on the mind and like the soul is, like, just as important, really. So I was afraid of dying and dying without achieved anything, without have, like, fulfilled anything. And it's a bit of a weird thing for, like, a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old to think about, but that, like, existential crisis of like why am I here? Like, what is the meaning of life? And nobody knows, really, Ollie. Like, it's like one of those things where people can say that they've got all the answers and it's this religion or it's that philosophy or whatever, but in reality, it's impossible to really, really give you, like, a definite answer on why we're here. What is reality? Like, what the fuck is this? Like, what are we doing right now? We're, like, two advanced monkeys speaking through mics with technology, with invisible signals going into the space, into satellites, beaming down onto people's phones that they've got stuck in their pockets all day, and it's showing my face right now on a screen in some different country. Like, what is this? Like, we are extreme bacteria on a huge circular spaceship called Earth, flying through the universe, which is infinite, and nobody has any idea what's going on, right? So, like, my biggest fear is, like, what is that? Like, what are we doing? Like, and what happens when you die? Is it just nothingness? Is it, do you go somewhere else? Is it the next plane of reality? Who knows? I think that the fact that you don't know, it's beautiful, because knowing that you're going to die is, like, it allows you to appreciate life. But at the same time, I just want to know what happens next, man. Like, and that's probably quite a deep answer. But my biggest fear, I mean, like, having a failing company, of course, having some crisis with my family, of course, that'll be terrible. But on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like, the willingness to feel important and understand what's happening, that's, like, the pier and the tip of the iceberg.
So talking about that self-actualization at the top of the triangle, let's fast forward to your funeral. What would a legacy mean to you, like leaving a mark on this world?
Well, if you can really, really work out the radical life extension stuff, then you wouldn't have a funeral, would you? You'd figure out a way to reverse aging, or like, transfer your consciousness into some AGI machine or something. So I don't know. Maybe we won't be there. But yeah. But realistically, everybody else that's ever been born has died. So statistically speaking, it's going to happen. I don't know. I mean, like, the argument could be that if it's your funeral and you're experiencing nothingness, then who gives a shit, because you're not going to be there to experience it, right? I guess you just want to make sure that the people that you love and that you care for are happy and supported, and and they don't have to think about money or stress or experience the challenges that you experienced along the way. So I guess the most important titles really are dad and father and granddad or whatever, hopefully at that point great granddad or something, entrepreneur, investor, speaker, podcast host, author. All of that falls away in the face of what's truly important. And I'd trade business for, I'd give all that away for family if I needed to any day of the week.
Wow. Listening to Alfie, I get the sense of something that we talk about with all entrepreneurs and leaders, which is this idea of contradictions and different tensions that exist within us. I mean, that conversation that you just had, that we just listened to, was absolutely fascinating and went in many, many different directions. I think that there's this whole mixture of things, from kind of wanting things to be bigger, wanting to leave a legacy, do something meaningful, at the same time as kind of saying, once you're dead, you're nothing, so does it really matter at all? But then also saying, well, family is all that matters, and so there's like all these different things that were going on, what seemingly kind of inside Alfie's head as you were having that conversation. It was almost like we were listening in on a conversation that he was having it with himself. So this notion of being able to kind of carry these different contradictions and to become more self-aware and to explore those things were all epitomized in what we just listened to, I think. Did you get that sense when you were talking to him?
I did. It was nice to hear his kind of internal monologue there of his thoughts and feelings. And, your priorities do undoubtedly change throughout the course of your life. I know he's recently had a baby, and obviously that is a massive milestone. And, that's probably completely changed his focus on what does really matter. Like, is it business? Is it whatever it is? Is it content? The takeaway that I took from it is that we've all got limited time. Like, you've got to achieve what you want to achieve, right? Otherwise, ultimately, what is the point? I mean, there's a deep, probably philosophical question to be answered there, but I think, Alfie's thought about it, which is the main thing.
When I was listening to him and he was kind of talking about existential crises, and I mentioned this just now when we were talking, but it really reminded me a lot of the things I felt previously all of the time. And that I feel kind of less now, which is kind of interesting, because as you get older, you'd think that you kind of feel like you're more in a race, but I kind of don't feel like that so much now. But I did get this sense of this kind of like, how do we do something meaningful? And I think with so many entrepreneurs are driven by this is the engine inside us of like, things aren't enough right now. And how do I, go about creating more impact? How do I go about creating meaning for my life? And actually things feeling quite meaningless some of the time. And this is actually something that's come up for me again recently. Like I said, this happened less and less as I've got older. And I think that comes from being more and more in alignment and knowing yourself better and being able to create your life in such a way that it kind of is fulfilling the things that are important to you, and perhaps even just understanding better what's important to you. But as a human, I think we're always going to go through these phases where we really do question, what am I here for? And what is this all about? What's the meaning of life, so to speak? And I actually do believe that the meaning of life is to essentially kind of listen to yourself, know yourself, and figure out how you are going to make an impact in the world, leave it a little bit better than you found it, if possible. And recently, I definitely have been finding that I think because I'm quite busy, and this is the ebbs and flows that we've talked about in previous episodes as well. Sometimes you find yourself so busy that all you're doing is the like day-to-day productivity, getting stuff done. And you sort of forget to step back and just go, hang on a second, who am I? Like, what do I need? What do I want? Am I dreaming anymore? And I've recognized that in myself recently. And I don't know, is this things that you experience as well?
Well, you definitely got to take that time to obviously reflect on how far you've come already, because I think that's mightily important, but also having a clear understanding of what the end goal actually is. Like, what does success really look like for you? Because if you don't define that, then how are you going to know when you get there? Because lots of business owners will, it might be an exit, or it might be growing to a certain size of the business, whatever that is. But ultimately, you will end up with a feeling of wanting more and more and more if you're not clearly defining what success looks like on your own terms.
It's something that I've found is that I often might hit certain success criteria, And certainly, like you said, if you look back and say, where was I a year ago? Where did I want to be now? Or where was I 10 years ago? Where did I want to be now? And you can look at that and go, oh yeah, like I did this, this, and this. Isn't that great? I'm getting to do all of these different things. Look at the work I get to do. Look at the people I get to work with, etc. Look at the money the business is bringing in, whatever it might be. And I think that some of these moments of existential crisis, or perhaps not that extreme, but some of those moments are about also reevaluating your success criteria, because that's definitely something that I realize is. And sometimes our goals are around those hygiene factors and just the things that we need in our life. And sometimes our goals are about something bigger, something, a bigger dream, a bigger goal that you want to hit. And I think that sometimes those things need to interplay, and you're not always able to kind of go for those really big things, even though I know that we talk about you always kind of going back and thinking about how you can get back to those bigger goals, those bigger dreams, thinking big impact. So I think that there's having these conversations, and sort of almost like Alfie allowed us into in this podcast, is something we sort of always need to come back to within ourselves.
I think what you said there, Becky, about constantly reevaluating them as well is critically important. And I think we talked about in the previous episode, but like, what is happiness? Like, it's the pursuit of working towards your goals and trying to enjoy the journey. And I think as long as you're enjoying it, you're happy, you've got your goals in place, then that's what matters.
Yeah. So one way that you can get to your goals, and certainly we've heard this from many of the founders that we've talked to, is to think big and then not to do everything yourself. And Alfie gave us a bit of a checklist really here around how you can do it. So just wanted to go back to that and say this idea of write everything down that needs to be done and cross off those things that you can get somebody else to do. And whether that be a machine, whether that be a human. So that automation, prioritization, delegation, simplification as well, all of these things are really going to help you. And actually, maybe that gives you a bit of headspace to do some of that other thinking we were just talking about as well.
Alfie is right here. Like, if you want to grow, there is a ceiling limit on what you can do. So it is about delegation and outsourcing and getting people to do stuff for you if you want this exponential growth, because otherwise it isn't possible. He gave actually a funny example of he recently employed a cleaner in his house, and he's got all of these like kind of fake plants, and she was going round and watering them, which I thought was quite funny. But it is true in life. Like, you've got to put a price on your time. I think every entrepreneur should be doing that. And if you've got the resources at your disposal, then knowing what that time's worth, and then if it's not worth your time and you can do it, then it is best to outsource it. But the critical point is you should be aware of how to do it in the first place. So if you're talking about doing some video editing and then working with a media agency, like, you should know the basics yourself first of how the process works in order to outsource it. Otherwise, if you're doing these things and outsourcing stuff, then you're probably going to be taken for a bit of a ride.
Yeah, I thought that point, and you brought this up in the interview as well, was really important. And I think by doing that, by kind of getting your hands in first and having an understanding, it really helps several aspects of delegation. Not only does it give you that knowledge, but it also means that you can ask the right questions such that you can trust people more easily, because of course you want to be able to trust people when you're bringing them on board to help you out. But I think it also helps you to understand where your energy is best used, the things you enjoy, the things where you can make a bigger impact and make a difference. And that might actually be in something that you haven't realized. And so there's almost this privilege of being a founder in the early days of sort of getting to get your hands into everything and every aspect of your business, try lots of different things. And then you realize, actually, on this stuff over here, I probably should keep hold of it, even though maybe it's something that you've only just developed, a new skill, and other people might be able to support you in that. But actually, you've learned along the way that this gives me energy, it motivates me, and I've got the skills to do it. So I think that is such an important point that you raise of do have an understanding of all the aspects of your business before you start to just shove it off to everybody else.
And just to caveat that, you're not going to be an expert in everything. So, as an example, one of the things that I hated initially when starting a business was like search engine optimization. It's a bit of a black art, like it's not really known. So you do some reading on it about keywords and meta tags and all these things. And it's obviously a long strategy that you have to invest in over time in terms of writing blogs and content and stuff like that. And that was one of the things that actually I was really happy to push away to somebody else, because it didn't excite me. It didn't make me happy. Like I just didn't enjoy it.
Shout out to all those people out there who get excited by SEO. There are some.
There definitely are some.
There are some. So I'm really intrigued to find out more about where Alfie wants to go next. Honestly, I'm genuinely not sure what this is going to look like in terms of what the next steps are for this business and where his thinking is. So let's go and have a listen to the next part of his story.
I think we have a scalable business from the perspective that recruitment is very much a science. Like, the process is very, very simple. We build really strong relationships with the community. We find the best software developers on the market across AI, across fintech, edtech and beyond. And then we can connect them with the most exciting, fastest growing tech teams and companies across London and across the UK, right? And we can train recruiters, bring them on board and allow them to do that. So it's a very scalable asset, and it's something that we could grow and then have acquired by a much larger agency, in a couple of years, and hopefully join them and help change the way that the recruitment is done. Doing it on your own in like a David and Goliath situation, it's a bit tricky, but partnering with somebody else, it's really, really big, and being able to have an exit to do that would be amazing. And then I have other moonshot visions in the future, but would need a little bit more cash to really go after them. So it would provide a nice nest egg for the next stuff. But yeah, I think in a couple of years, I would like to have the business, in a much larger team, between, close to 50 people, give or take, that would be a great outcome. And then that's a business which is consistently profitable, which is helping the world and, helping to transform different industries and change people's lives by getting them better careers, transform businesses by giving them the best people that they need to serve their customers, to provide the best products and services and help the economy and their markets more. And then if the big recruitment agency would like to partner with us to help us take that to the next level, then that's something that I'm definitely open to as well. I mean, a lot of businesses are started for the purpose of the end in mind, the exit, and yeah, look, it's something that I'm definitely open to.
How do you see AI and Web3 technologies evolving?
Well, those are two very different questions. AI is becoming scary because AI will very soon be creating the next type of AI, which will create the next type of AI, and then it's unstoppable at that point, unless we start bombing data centers or something, right? Not that I'm advocating for that, but like we could have a world of pure abundance where everything is done for us, but also we could have a nightmare situation where we become the apes and AI becomes the humans, and we become subservient. Who knows if it's going to become conscious, self-aware, sentient, and if it does, what's humanity's place on Earth? Web3, slightly different. If we're talking about VR and AR, those technologies are growing quickly. They're always advancing. I mean, I'm wearing smart glasses right now. I've got cameras and mics built into these. I can look at a camera. I can say, hey, tell me about what model this camera is. It captures it instantly. It uses a large language model to give me that information. It will then give me audio through the stems. I mean, that kind of smart technology it's incredible, right? So we're using AI and Web3 and merging them together to understand the world. VR with like the Apple Vision Pro, it's starting to get more mainstream. When Apple does something, people start to go, okay, Apple have done it. Let's pay attention. Apple Vision Pro is still pretty primitive in like a Ready Player One situation, but when we get to the Apple Vision 12 or even like 3 or 4, are we going to be spending the majority of our lives living in a metaverse type world? yes might be the answer. And then if we're talking about the other elements of Web3, like blockchain, I do believe blockchain technology will change the world. It's kind of gone through and with crypto, it's kind of gone up, it's gone down, and then if you look at any kind of hype trend, it always has that initial burst and then it goes crazy afterwards. I got into Bitcoin and Ethereum and Doge and a bunch of other cryptos like super early. So I'm, from a financial perspective, I'm really, really hoping that they continue to grow, right? That could be like, retirement plan backup, like confirmed, and don't have to think about that anymore. But I do believe it's the future of money. I think governments will fight it and try to control it because it's not in their interests to lose power over that, fundamental part of keeping the people in line. But with the blockchain, even things like NFTs kind of came and went. But what about if every receipt was an NFT and stored on the blockchain? What if, like, in the world of recruitment, all reference checks could be verified on blockchain technology? There's so many, like, amazing use cases which we're going to see over the next couple of years, which will completely change the world. I mean, the future of AI is really, really, really exciting and could be incredible. It could also kill everybody on the planet. The future of Web3 is, equally just as amazing, but it could also lead to us just being like in that Wall-E type situation where we're just staring at a screen and we're not even like having conversations anymore. Like, why are we here, Ollie? Why are we having a conversation in person? Because it's better than Zoom. And I do fear that some of those Web3 technologies could make people forget about that. It's almost dystopian to some degree.
Great insights there, Alfie. If you had to distill down just one piece of advice for an early stage founder, what would it be?
I think I'd really, really double down on what I mentioned earlier in terms of my own personal failing. Like don't try to, be the jack of all trades. Try to be the specialist and know what you're doing and what your customers want, and do that specifically, because you will very, very quickly make the money to pay for other people to do all the other stuff. Like, you can get an accountant, you can get a lawyer, you can get even if you're a small stage, you can get like fractional CTOs and all that stuff. Like, do not try and do everything. You will pull your hair out and you'll probably fail. Just understand what your task is, do that task better than anybody else, and the rest of the stuff will be figured out.
And Alfie, I know you had a question for our listeners.
So we talked about AI on this podcast, Ollie. When do people believe AI will become sentient, if ever? So if we're doing like a LinkedIn poll and you got like 4 options, maybe we could say this year, next year, the year after plus, or never, or something like that. Like, who knows? And the sentient is subjective, but to make it very, very clear, I would say that it can think for itself. So, it can talk to you in a way that it's not programmed. It actually has independent thought. Because the ultimate question with AI is consciousness uniquely biological? Or can it be replicated by a machine if we give it enough computing power? And the answer to that probably is yes. And I know that it's hard to really agree to that if you are like perhaps religious, or if you really, really believe in the soul or something. But can a machine have a soul? I mean, what is a soul? So it's an important question, and it's probably something that world leaders need to really start to debate and get around, right? So when will AI become conscious? Is it this year? Is it next? Is it the year after plus? Or is it never?
Great question there, Alfie, and we'll get some answers on socials for you. Where can people find out a bit more about Alfa Technologies and you personally online?
Rather than giving you like 50 links, I'll just say alfiewhattam.com. I'm sure you can put like a link in the description or whatever. If you go there, you'll have links to everything that I do. That's my recruiting agency. You can check out my podcast, my newsletter, my book, speaking. We got on every social media platform. We create daily content: YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, whatever. Even if I don't like that platform, we have somebody posting content every single day on there. And then we have a course coming out soon, teaching people how to make more money, how to become more successful, mindset, how to go from nothing and start a company, build something amazing. So that will be out in a few weeks, so probably similar to when this drops. And yeah, all of those links will be available at alfiewhattam.com, link below, I imagine.
Amazing. Alfie, thank you so much for your time and insights. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfie, for that question. Definitely one with food for thought. So if you've got thoughts about when you think AI will become sentient, do go over and answer that question on our socials. One thing this made me wonder, and especially with all the other things that Alfie was talking about, is, and we talk a lot about this, when will AI become sentient? When will it become conscious? The flip side of it is, as humans, we're outsourcing everything to AI. So something I've been thinking about a lot recently is, when will humans actually lose their consciousness because we've outsourced everything to tech? And I think I come from this perhaps naive hypothesis of, well, we actually do want humanity. We want human connection. We can tell when a robot's written something, but can we really anymore? And actually, especially on social media, are we in fact more happy to read something that has been constructed by a robot, by an AI, because it follows a format that we're now getting very comfortable with? And so we talk so much about like the robots or the AI taking over, but in fact is what's happening is like we're allowing that to take over, and it means that we're stopping doing things that make us human. So some food for thought there.
It's a very deep question, Becky. I think ultimately that, humans are always going to want to have that human-to-human contact. I think, people are what makes the world a great place. There are undoubtedly some dangers with AI, which, if we allow it, there could have some really bad consequences. And the technology is evolving so fast, we just don't know when these changes are going to affect our lives on a day-to-day basis. So I think that, we just, as humans, we still have control of this, but there may be a tipping point. I don't know enough about technology to give you when that's going to happen, but there's some great people out there online if you look them up.
Yeah, I think my approach was actually kind of reflected in the way that Alfie was talking about technology. And I thought it was very interesting, actually, is that as we delved into the future, really what was coming out for him was a lot of excitement about different technologies. And so I think there's three things that we can think about when we think about technology, and I think that we have to think about when we think about technology. I think one is the kind of tech for tech's sake. So just getting excited by kind of what can potentially be done, and playing and being innovative and creative. And I think that's such a wonderful thing about technology. It's exciting, it's fun, and there's just so much scope. It's pretty much infinite. Then there's, of course, the second thread being tech for impact. And I always think this is very important, thinking about why are we actually using this? What's the point? How is this going to benefit us as society, people, planet, businesses? And of course, then the third strand, which kind of the flip side of this, is about ethics and technology, and I guess kind of making sure that we're always thinking about what are the potential negative impacts here, or what are the things that we're doing. And again, kind of with AI, thinking about which data sets we're using, thinking about diversity and representation. Like that's one obvious kind of example of where there can be issues in technology. But I think that's as people, actually, as humans in this world, we live in a technical world. And I really think that we have a responsibility to kind of look at all three of those threads and go, okay, how can, like, technology is a creative thing, and not just shunning it, because that's not going to help anyone. Technology is a positive impact, but then technology ethics, and how can we ensure that we kind of continue to keep our humanity in this world that's technology driven. And so if we all kind of think about that and take that lesson from Alfie, and because he discussed all three of those things, I think that then helps us. And it makes the technological future exciting and impactful. And yes, still perhaps a little bit scary, but we're doing it mindfully.
And I think that, using AI for time saving is incredible. Like, you're so much more productive and you can focus on the things that you want to focus on. So I'd say that's the first thing. Second, I think, we are living in a climate crisis right now. Every month for the last 12 months has been the hottest year on record. Like, we're going to see a massive rise in global temperatures. People are talking about anywhere from 2.5, 3.5 above the target of 1.5. And, I think technology is hopefully going to play a big part in solving that biggest crisis that we're staring at as human beings right now.
I couldn't agree more, Ollie. It's perhaps got us into this mess, and now we need to be thinking in a way where it can really help us to get out of this mess. So if you're interested in knowing more about Alfie and Alfa Tech, make sure you go and check out their links. And Ollie, what are people saying about the last episode that we had from Roy at Connected?
Roy Samuel, founder of Connected, asked a killer of a question for you, our listeners. He wanted to know if there was just one thing you could bring into your business immediately as a founder, what would it be? The options he gave were A, funding, B, talent, or C, revenue. The results are in, and 62% of you voted for revenue. Given the current climate, I'm not surprised. That was followed by 23% going for funding, and the remaining 15% of you voting for talent. Thanks for such a crack of a question, Roy. So the first thing to say is that we are going to be launching season 6, which we're very, very excited about. I've actually recorded 3 interviews already that are in the can. So our first guest for season 6 is going to be a founder called Nick, who has founded a company called Optimize AI. Now, they basically use data and AI to help buildings, commercial buildings, be more energy efficient, which links back nicely to our last point about carbon savings and saving the planet and being more environmental. So really interesting to hear Nick's story.
And I'm so excited for season 6 because hopefully we can hear about several more entrepreneurs, founders who are doing great things to build businesses and make a positive impact in this world. It's been a pleasure to be part of the whole of a season now, the whole of season 5. Can't wait for season 6. So thank you for having me, Ollie, here on Founded and Grounded.
Well, thank you for joining us, Becky. I know we had a conversation and there was just a connection there, and you wanted to get back into podcasting. And I think the stars just aligned quite nicely. And within 2 weeks, we were recording episode 1 of season 5. And I can't believe we're at the end of it. But I'm delighted that you're going to be joining us again on season 6. And I can't wait to dive into all these impactful entrepreneurs that are doing big things in this world.
And thank you for everyone out there for listening to this episode and for the whole of season 5. Don't forget, if you like what you've heard, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And don't forget, there's a big selection of previous episodes. Just search Founded and Grounded on your favorite podcast player.